Chapter 7 Big Trouble in Little Rock. The Montgomery bus boycott made Martin Luther King famous. People all over America began to talk about the young black ministers who had organized it. But King knew that Montgomery was only the beginning. Black people had won their fight in Montgomery, but it was not the only fight that they had to win in the South. To win their civil rights, black people needed to organize themselves. In 1957, hundreds of Southern black church leaders met together to talk about what to do next. At the meeting, King said that black people had to work together to win their civil rights. The church leaders organized themselves into the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Martin Luther King became the president of the SCLC. He told that they had to join together to fight for the rights of black people in the South. King wrote a book, Stride Toward Freedom, to explain his idea. In his book, he told about the teachings of Gandhi. King believed that not violence was the only way to win the fight for black rights. In Montgomery, the boycott had been not violent. The police had beaten the protesters and they had tried to break the boycott by violence. But the protesters had not fought that. They had no sticks or guns, and they had not fought violence with violence. They had just refused to let people treat them unfairly, and they had won because they were right, not because they were violent. There were many other things in the South that needed to change. Schools were segregated. White children went to all white schools. Black children went to all black schools. Although there were more black children than white children in the South. Much more money was spent on white schools than on black schools. But in 1954, the law was changed. Now it was against the law to have different schools for black children and white children. The new law said that all schools had to take both black and white children. Change came slowly to the South. Many white people hate the new law, and in many southern states they refused to obey it. Arkansas was one of these states. In the state capital, Little Rock, 9 black students tried to enter the Central High School at the start of the 1957-50 school year. Little Rock soon became one of the most famous places in the story of the fight for civil rights. On 2nd September, the night before the start of the new school year, the leader of the Arkansas government, overall famous, ordered the National Guard to stand outside Central High School. He told them to stop any black students from entering the school because he was afraid. On the 2nd September, the night before the start of the new school year, the leader of the Arkansas government, overall famous, ordered the National Guard to stand outside Central High School. He told them to stop any black students from entering the school because he was afraid of trouble from protesters. The school was closed, but a judge said that Fabius could not use the National Guard to do something that was against the law. On 23rd September, the Little Rock police took the 9 black students into Central High. A court of more than 1,000 white people tried to stop the black students from entering. The crowd rioted and attacked the police. The pictures of the riot were sent all over the world, and many Americans were shocked to see such ugly attacks in their own country. Next day, the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, ordered the army to Little Rock. 1,000 soldiers stood in front of the crowd as the 9 black students entered Little School Central High School. Every morning, the 9 black children walked into the school, and every morning the soldiers protect them as they walk through crowds of angry whites. One of the Little Rock Nine, Elizabeth Edward, later talked about that while past the angry crowd. I looked for a friendly face in the crew. I saw a nice-looking old woman. She seems to have a kind face, but when I smiled at her, she spat at me. Inside the school, things were different. Ernest Green, one of the 9 black students, remembered the friendly white students who helped him. I missed 3 weeks of school, so I was behind in my classwork. A couple of boys in my class gave me notes on the lessons that I missed. After seeing the crowd outside the school, I was really surprised by this. Chapter 8: A New Start. From Black people in America, 1960 was an important year. King was busier than ever. He decided to move back to his father's church in Atlanta. He spent He decided to move back to his father's church in Atlanta. He spent half of his time working in his church and the other half working for the ECLC. King's policy of non-violence protest was becoming more popular. Soon, black people found a new way to protest: the sit-in. Restaurants in the South were still segregated. One day in February 1960, 4 black students in Greensboro, North Carolina, walked into a shop called Woolworth's. There were hundreds of Woolworth's shops across the country, and many had restaurants inside the shop. The students sat down at a table and politely asked for lunch. The waitress refused to take their order and told the students to go, but they refused to leave the restaurant. Instead, they began a sit-in. They sat at their tables and waited until the restaurant closed. Next day, some more students joined them. Then some white students joined the sit-in too. The Greensboro students were arrested, but the sit-ins did not stop. Soon there were sit-ins at restaurants all over the South. More white students from the North traveled to the South to join the sit-ins. In July 1960, Warslow's family agreed to let both black and whites use their restaurants. Other big companies did the same. So, once again, no violence protests have been successful in a battle for civil rights. Martin Luther King joined the sit-ins when students held a sit-in at an Atlanta restaurant in October 1960. He stayed with them. He was arrested and put in prison. King was not sorry to go to prison. Like Handy, he believed that you should not obey above law. If the law is unfair, he argued, then it is right to break it. It is better not to obey above law than to obey it. If this means that you go to prison, then you have to accept that. King was not afraid of prison, but King's family and friends were afraid for him. They knew that King's life was in danger in prison. He had many enemies, and there were people who wanted to kill him. In the South, in 1960, it was not difficult to get a black prisoner. Coretta King went to John F. Kennedy for help. Kennedy had already said that segregation was a bad thing, and he promised to help King. When Kennedy asked the judge to let King go, the judge agreed, but Martin Luther King later went to prison many more times when he refused to obey unfair laws. 1 month later, in November 1960, John F. Kennedy became President of the United States. Across the country, people were full of hope. The young president promised a new start. Surely, this must mean the end of all loss and freedom at last for black people in the South. But most white people in the South still did not want change. They were ready to fight to keep their way of life. There was a road of freedom, but it was not short and it was not easy.